Welcome to Working the Web to Win. I'm Carl Weiss. With me is Hector the Connector Cisneros. And you know, today, spring has sprung here in Florida. I don't know about the rest of the nation at large. I mean, some places they're still shoveling snow, I think. But, you know, pretty soon another school year is going to be ending. You know what that means?
Yeah.
Vacation time. Yeah. And, you know, a lot of families opt for a lot of the traditional destinations, like going to theme parks and going to national parks and beaches and campgrounds and things like that. But today we're going to be talking about some of the places a little bit off the beaten trail.
Yeah.
In fact, the name of our show today has to do with getting away from it all. But before we get away from it all, I'm going to let you introduce our sponsors and also our guest today.
So I'm going to go ahead and start out by giving our call-in. Our call-ins are out there at the cyber call-in, 213-943-3808. That's 213-943-3808. Of course, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, and YouTube, and of course, Working the Web to Win. I want to start out by giving our sponsors some kudos, specifically Tub King, who sells the most beautiful bathtubs that you can find in the world. They have these elegant step-in tubs that have these clawfoots that are, I mean, they're the ones that you see in all the movies. Literally, if you've seen a really cool bathtub, they probably got it from these guys. They also sell the therapeutic walk-in tubs, which are like little mini spas that you can use. And MedMasters, which is the premier online job hunt board that's for social networking communities, for healthcare and medical professionals. Now I have on the line here our guest today, Tom Chudley, who is with Free Spirits Fairs. And we're going to get to your whole story here in a few minutes here, but I'm going to roll it back over to Carl. And I just wanted to put in a real plug for Earth Day, since it's like this is like the 25th Earth Day, something like that. And there's lots of cool things on the website where all the Earth Day people out there can find and download some really cool stuff. So Carl, tell me about this vacation idea you had, because I figured you wrote this because you hadn't been on vacation for a while.
You know, practically the only way I'm going to be able to be on vacation is virtual at this point, you know. So yeah, you got to take it where you can find it. But the interesting thing was when I started doing some searches, I mean, there's some really interesting things that you can find online. Yeah. We're going to go through some of them, but I think that to start things off with, I'm going to actually start off with the guys who coined the phrase getting away from it all. And that would have been the crew of the HMS Bounty. Remember Mutiny in the Bounty?
Yeah.
Well, what happened to these guys is back in 1790, they had a little altercation with their captain, Boy, and decided to set the dude adrift. So they took the Bounty and they wanted to find a place where, you know, obviously they knew the authorities couldn't find them very quickly. So they ended up on this little rock in the South Pacific called Pitcairn Island.
Yeah, and it's a small place too. It's not very big at all. It's in the middle of nowhere.
It's not exactly the Hawaiian Islands, but the point was it worked out very well for them because it took like 30 years before the British finally found where they were, and by then the whole scene had changed. In fact, I think there was only one or two of the original mutineers left. Right. But since then...
But they had a lot of offspring.
So since then, the entire island has been populated by 56 of their offspring.
Yeah.
So it's still, to this day, it has the distinction of being the least populous nation on the planet.
And it's a nation by itself, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. And think about it, you know, got Bly out there in this boat, and he's got to go... how many thousands of miles to get anywhere? I mean, and he made it.
It sure did.
And that's why they came back for him, because they wanted to put him all in jail.
But the point was, though, is that they made it too, because what they did was when they ended up finally going to Pitcairn, they actually burnt the ship.
Yeah.
And it's still in the bay in the actual right off the island, and they actually go down and scuba dive on it from time to time. But people can actually visit it. Now it's more or less this little tourist place, but it's not exactly you know, Disney World. I think last year they ended up getting like 25 yachts that went on over there because there's no airfield. The only other way to get on and off the island is via their little supply ship.
Right. And where can you stay when you go there? I mean, is there like a little hotellets or where?
It's not like Motel 6, right? What they actually have, there's a couple of ways you can find accommodations there. One is they have some chalets and bungalows that you can rent, but you can also stay with families on the island. It's like a bed and breakfast.
That would be cool.
Yeah, and like I said, the thing is that you can stay there from 4 to 11 days. So you get a visa, and you can go, be a tourist on Pitcairn Island and find out how the other half lives. It's kind of definitely what you would call off the beaten path kind of a destination. So that's where I started my little blog today, because I figured, hey, let's start it off with the guys who kind of coined the phrase and take it from there.
Well, I'm going to turn over to our guest that I have online here, Tom Chudley. Tell us a little bit about the Free Spirit spheres and how you got the idea and why you're doing this today.
Okay, Hector, I've been at it for 20 years now, and it was just one of those ideas that came to me and it wouldn't go away. So I probably thought about it for 3 years before I even got going on building the first sphere. I built the first sphere, started in '93, and it went up in the trees the very first time in about 1997. So I've got one sphere that's been up there in the trees for about 17 years now. And as soon as we put a sphere up in the trees, it started getting publicity. I suspend my spheres from ropes, so they hang from a triangle of trees, basically. And we've been running a spherical treehouse resort here in Qualicum Bay on Vancouver Island for about the last 8 years. And it's really becoming very popular. We're only allowed 3 units of accommodation because of the zoning here. But our 3-bedroom spheres are booked about 270 nights a year each. So
well, I know that
see them through the winter.
I know that our listeners can't see them, but if you go to the TV show, you'll be able to actually see the spheres themselves. These are really, really cool looking round rooms that are like suspended in the air with all kinds of really cool things in them and so on.
It's kind of like what you hang on the Christmas tree at large, right. Is that it?
Yeah, they look like big Christmas tree ornaments, except they're really, really big. So tell us a little bit about the accommodations that are inside them.
Well, they're finished like yachts inside. I use teak, and this one I'm in right now has got a black walnut and white vinyl interior. So they're tricked out like yachts, a little bit of a steampunk flavor in that, you can't go buy window hinges for a sphere anywhere, so I have to make my own. So I've got a little foundry and I can do my own bronze casting, so I jazz them up with Norse runes and Celtic rope work and things like that.
Cool.
So, and the door hardware is very similar. You can't go buy door hardware for a sphere door anywhere, so you've got to make it all yourself. So it's also got that steampunk flavor to it.
I know they look really cool. I saw all the pictures of it. And I know right now you're up in Canada, so we're at about 78 degrees today. I think 80 is going to be the high or something like that. What's the temperature up there right now?
It's probably about 60 degrees today, Hector. And spring is in the air. I mean, the leaves are out on the deciduous trees. Of course, we got predominantly evergreens up here, which are green year-round. But, yeah, the leaves are definitely coming out. The frogs have been croaking for about a month up here. The spring mating ritual for frogs.
So in the wintertime, do people also rent them?
Yeah, they're heated. They're on the grid, Hector. In fact, there's thermostat on the wall. You just dial the temperature. It's actually really nice in the winter when it's really stormy. You can hear the rain pattering on the roof, and you're perfectly comfortable in a sphere. And it kind of moves with since it's hanging from almost vertical tethers, the sphere just gently sways around in the wind.
So rock your sleep, okay.
So as long as they don't have any big cats to play with and beat them around, they're good.
Well, that it's kind of interesting that Tom has a very unique take on being an innkeeper, and some of the places that we found during our research also are pretty interesting. While this one isn't hanging from a tree, it's almost as unusual in that there's one called Jules Undersea Lodge,
right,
which is basically an underwater hotel. Well, it's not really a hotel. It's more of a bed and breakfast kind of a thing because it only holds like 6 people.
Right. I remember when they built this, because, again, I'm from Key West originally.
This is Key Largo.
Yeah, and when they built this, it was a big to-do, and it was a big splash. But it's been around for a pretty long time.
Since the 80s, basically, is when they converted. Because originally, they started off with it as a research vessel. Right. They were using it to, research habitation underwater and things like that in the 70s. Right. And then in the 80s, it changed hands, and they decided, hey, let's turn it into a under a deep six Motel 6, you know. So that's what they've done, and now people can actually go in and stay there because you can take you and up to 5 of your best friends can go spend a night or two underneath. Now, of course, you have to use scuba to go down to the lodge, but once you're inside, you know, it's short sleep comfort.
Yeah.
Once you're in there, it's just checking in and checking out requires a scuba tank.
Right. So you got to be certified at least to get in and out. That's the cool part about it. I know that you also talked about some not underwater but underground type of things. So, you know, people would go into Paris and they're hanging out in the sewers of Paris.
You know, I mean. Everybody's been to Paris, you know, they've done the Louvre and, you know, the Eiffel Tower. I mean, you get tired of all that stuff. So if you want something a little bit different, they actually have guided tours of the Paris sewer system, including part of it, apparently, it's been turned into a museum.
Huh. So they got all those skulls and stuff.
Oh, everything, yeah, and I understand that it's quite a sensation. Plus the fact that it's relatively inexpensive. I think the thing was only like €5 a head. So it's not because like when you go to the.
So do they keep your head afterwards?
Yeah, exactly. You got to watch it in Paris about that. You know what I mean? But it's like, you know, if you want to go and stay in the underwater hotel, the minimum is like $300 per person per night, and it's in a group of 6.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit more cost conscious because, like I said, for €5 you can take a guided tour of the Paris Underground.
But can you sleep under it? That's the trick for it. Can you sleep?
Well, the problem is if you do, you may never get back out.
So Tom, have you ever heard of the Jules Undersea Luxury Hotel, the one that's in the Keys?
I have heard of those, actually. We're in a lot of books together.
Ah.
There's one called Bed in a Tree that was written by a woman from Germany, and it's 50 adventures around the world, and it's got a couple of underwater hotels in it. One in the Seychelles, the islands in the Indian Ocean.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, speaking of cool, one of the other things that I took a look at, and this is something that, again...
I bet you this one's in there too.
Well, yeah, probably, because I was going to say it's right up his alley, since he's kind of in one of the colder climes. Have you heard of the ice hotels? And apparently there's a number of them around the world where they literally make the hotel every winter. They build it out of ice.
Yep.
They furnish it.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, you got to get there before spring thaw. So I don't know if it's going to be much of a summer destination.
You know, I'm thinking you lay it on this bed. It's made out of blocks of ice. How do you keep that warm?
Actually, snow keeps you warm.
Well, there's no snow. This is ice blocks. I mean, literally, I'm looking at a picture of the bed here, and you're laying on this big block of ice with some like covers on it. I mean. Yeah. I know that when I go camping, I usually use a cool pad that keeps me warm so that the ground doesn't cool me off.
Well, and there's a number of these things. I mean, they're all over the place. They're in Norway, they're in Sweden, there's one in Finland, there's one in Quebec, so there's one in Canada.
Yep.
There's one in Norway, and then there's also one in Romania.
Because you said Norway.
Well, yeah, there must be, because I'm reading them off the top here, so they have different ones. But I mean, the thing is that they actually build these things. Some of these things are quite elaborate. I mean, it's not like an igloo or anything like that. I mean, these things are quite impressive structures.
At the beginning of the winter, does a guy go in there with a chainsaw and start whacking away, or?
I think they start off actually with earth movers and bulldozers to, build this big pile of snow. But like the one here, the one that's in Finland, they say literally it's 5 acres in size, and it even has a bar.
Well, this one here that I'm looking at.
I bet you can get a really cold beer in that place.
64,000 square feet.
There you go,
That's a pretty big place.
64,000 square feet. There's another one, yeah.
So, again, they got to be pretty cool. And I've gotten to see a lot of ice sculptures and stuff, but I've never seen one of these ice hotels. And I think that would be sort of I'd like to visit it for a day. I don't know if I want to stay in it, but I'd like to visit one and check it out.
Well, with global warming, you might have to hurry up.
Well, they built one last year here.
Yeah.
In the wintertime, it melted in a pretty short period of time, but they actually built one here up around Palatka somewhere, which is out in the middle of nowhere.
Some of these things, the accommodations are unbelievable, because you were looking at the blog, but I mean, I've actually got the link that's on the blog that goes to the page which is talking about the 5 finest ice hotels in the world. And like I said, when you look at the accommodations inside of these things, it's like, wow.
They trick them out.
They sure do.
Tom, what would be the typical tourist that goes to your site up there in Canada?
Well, I'd say probably most often we get young folk between about 25 and 40 years old, but You know, I put a new sphere up about 3 years ago called Melody, and the very first guests in that sphere were an 82-year-old man and his girlfriend on his 82nd birthday. You know.
I thought you were going to say his 82nd anniversary or something. Whoa.
So we get all kinds, the whole range.
I know that, you know, when people, I guess, especially in America, they get bored with all kinds of stuff. So they're always looking for something new and exotic or whatever. One of the newest ones that's out there, people going for trips out of this world. Instead of in the world, they got to go out of this world.
Are you talking about space tourism?
Space tourism. They want to go out into outer space and, you know, be weightless and all that other kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, actually, the whole space tourism business got its start about 20 years ago because, in fact, what it was is that originally several millionaires went and talked to a couple of travel operators that had connections, mostly not with our space agency, but believe it or not, with the Russians, right? And a couple of them spent, I think, between $20 and $40 million for a trip up on a Soyuz capsule to the International Space Station, where, of course,
the Russians needed some money.
That they always do.
and they got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, if you were a billionaire, what are you going to do with your money anyway? Yeah, might as well go do whatever you can do.
Yeah, let's go hang out in orbit for a couple of months. Because, I mean, this isn't like you can just go up there and stay for a weekend. You know what I mean? When you're up there for quite a while. I mean, some of the cosmonauts will stay up there for 6 months at a time.
Yeah. And they come back and they can't walk for about a month.
Yeah, well, that's the problem when you're up in space is that, you know, your body starts to evolve. Because you don't need to have all those bones and all that muscle, you know, in zero gravity. So over time, they say that the astronauts, when they come back from a 6-month stay, and these guys, most of them are in their 30s and 40s, they have the bone structure of like a 70-year-old.
Yeah, so it takes them a while to try and get it back.
Yeah.
And I know right now, I mean, the space program is transitioning from a government type of entity into a private entity.
Yeah.
I mean, recently they had the SpaceX thing trying to go
Dragon,
up.
that went up. In fact, that was what I think we talked about that last week. They actually, they went up there and they dropped off the legs to the robonauts, and now you can walk as well as work.
So, again, that's a private enterprise thing that Sir Richard Branson, you know, any flight.
Virgin Galactic.
Virgin Galactic can go in there and they flip around, and so you can do.
Well, no, Virgin Galactic is different. You're thinking of zero G.
Okay.
That's because basically everything is. It all depends on how thick of a wallet you've got. Because like I said, if you want to go to the ISS, you're looking between $20 and $40 million. Now, Virgin Galactic is going to take 6 paying passengers into basically it's a suborbital flight. So it's kind of like the early Mercury space shuttle. They're going to take you up to the edge of space and then do a little corral and come back down. And
so you have to be weightless for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's going to be a longer thing than that. But I mean, you're going to get right up to the edge of the space where you actually be able to see the curvature of the Earth and all that. And that is something that they've actually built a specialized spaceship, and it gets carried up. It's almost like what reminds me of the old X-15. They used to carry it up underneath the B-52. Well, they built their own carrying ship, which basically carries the rocket up with it, and then they set it loose from 50,000 feet and climb up.
My understanding that it's at a bargain price too.
Well, bargain is you have to define bargain because each seat runs $250K.
See, I can afford that.
That's all?
In about 3 lifetimes.
Yeah, but you're not staying. You're going up and coming back. So,
see, when the show's a big hit, that'll be the first thing we'll do. We'll
there you go. Hey, we'll tell you what. We'll all chip in. We'll send you up on the next one. How's that? That's the thing too. They're taking deposits now, but they still haven't announced their launch date yet.
Yeah.
So you have to stay tuned for that. But if you can't wait, there is a way that you can kind of get the sensation of being in space without ever really going into space. And that's the guys from Zero G. It's actually an outfit called nogravity.com.
Right.
And they take you up in a modified 727, you know, where they do this parabolic flight.
Right.
So, in fact, that's how they shot a lot of the scenes from Apollo 13.
That's also how they originally trained the astronauts to deal with the Zero G.
Yeah, in fact, they have the one that they use for the NASA, they actually have a nickname for it. Do you know what it is? It's called the Vomit Comet.
The Vomit Comet.
For obvious reasons.
I want to go on that one right away.
You know, that's what I tell people. Before you start spending big money
you gotta
to go up to orbit, you definitely want to go on one of these zero-G things because some people hate it.
Yeah.
You know, you're up there for, you know, an hour or so, but I mean, when you go up on the space station, even a lot of astronauts, some of those guys up there really did not like being weightless for all that amount of time because it really doesn't, some people just can't handle it.
Their stomach gets all queasy and wacky and all that kind of stuff.
So this is, and this is, now you want to talk about relatively cheap, I mean, because you can go up on zero-G for, I think they say it starts at around $5,000
Oh,
for a trip up on one of those.
So now we can do that one 25 times.
There you go. I'll tell you what. I'll give you the camera. You and Nash can go up, and I'll sit on the ground and laugh at you.
Well, I know, we've got about 10 minutes left in the show. I mean, one of the things that I researched on, which was really off the peg on this, because my idea was, if you're going to do one of these vacations, you just unplug and go hang out and do stuff. I mean, I've had the privilege of going with the Boy Scouts on several summer camps where essentially you unplug for 6 or 7 days and do the camping thing, and that's usually a lot of fun. But most people really don't want to unplug. As a matter of fact, a lot of the research I did was people were complaining about why we shouldn't unplug. Because we need our email, we need to be attached to people and all this other kind of stuff. And the reality is, you don't need to be talking to your friends on Facebook and Twitter and all that kind of stuff, 24/7, 365. I mean, that's just crazy stuff. And if people do unplug, they'll find that it actually improves their health and helps them get really sort of back to nature, I would say. But also connect with your family and friends, because it's hard to be plugged in and be connected to people in reality, because being plugged in on the internet is not necessarily being plugged in with your friends and family. Todd, so tell us what's next for you out there.
Sorry, could you repeat that, Hector?
Yeah, Tom, tell us what's coming up next for you out there in Canada.
Oh, we're going to try and expand the concept of this spherical treehouse. We're going to move into an older forest. In fact, we're looking to move next winter, and a more mature forest where we can put more spheres up and connect everything with canopy walkway systems. So there would be cool bathrooms and restaurants and everything all up in the forest canopy, connected by canopy walkway systems.
So these spheres can actually be moved easily.
Oh, absolutely. They're in fact quite easy to move, Hector. I rented one of my big wooden ones to Land Rover for an ad campaign they were doing in Europe back 8 years ago, just before we moved here.
Neat. We have a lot of forests here in Florida, believe it or not.
Yeah,
gators to go with
Washington State has got a great forest system.
We have several national forests that they're just looking for these orbs. I know they are. I think we ought to have some here. And I know that the Boy Scouts would love to be in them. And one of the big things here in the campsites here, they have tree houses in one of the Boy Scout summer camps. And they always get booked up right away. So all the regular tents are like secondary. So if the kids can get in those tree houses, boom. That's like the cat's meow for most of them. And I've had the privilege of staying in them a couple of times myself. We have a few minutes left. I want to make sure we put kudos into our sponsors again. I want to mention MedMaster, which is a premier online job hunt board and social networking community for healthcare and medical professionals. And of course, Tub King, which have the therapeutic walk-in tubs and the elegant slipper tubs and all the other types of clawfoot tubs that you see in the movies and so on. Carl, I know we have minutes left and you're going to be doing the Worldwide Weird. I wanted to mention Earth Day again, because on the blog itself, if they go to the notes page for the teachers out there and so on, I put a lot of really cool stuff that they could use, like lesson plans and games and stuff for the kids to do. So, and there's a whole bunch of things on how to honor Earth Day and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sort of somewhat of a closet environmentalist, although I'm not an extremist on it. But it sort of plugs into the being unplugged. I mean, doing the nature thing, I really like going for walks and leaving my cell phone and all that stuff and just getting away from the whole thing. And if people plan being unplugged, they can have great vacations in like these orbs or any of these other places, because most of these exotic places, when you go there, you're unplugged whether you want to or not. Just like that one, the Do Castaway out there in Malaysia. When they drop you off on that island, you're out of touch. I mean, it's like the Malaysian airline that disappeared. That's what happens to you. You're on the island, and you're going until they come and pick you up for the most part.
Well, and like I said, we did a couple hours of research here to find some of the, more off the beaten path kind of destinations. But I mean, there's no limit to how much you can find online, because they're everywhere. I've seen ones where they actually had things where they've got like reindeer races and igloo accommodations. I mean, there's all kinds of strange things out there. So it all depends on what you're really interested in doing.
Well, even for the people who, let's say, they don't want to unplug. There's all kinds of virtual reality type of tours. I mean, say you can't even afford to go on a vacation. I found a whole bunch of really cool sites, again, that are on the notes page, And of course, if they're a member of Club WQ, there's even more stuff in the Dropbox for them. That they could do virtual tours on their laptops or tablets, or if they plug it into their big screen, they could almost seem like they're really there, especially if they order in something, you know. But I mean, literally, you can go out and see the pyramids from 15 different angles and rotate it and go left and right and tour the Grand Canyon. I mean, there was a whole bunch of things out there that you could do. And they now have these new virtual reality glasses by Oculus, which is a company that actually Facebook just bought for some reason. Like, again, I don't know how it's going to work with Facebook and how Facebook is going to sell this in their product line.
Yeah, I'm surprised Google would pick it up because, you know, Google has Google Earth. And I figured, boy, that'd be a real way to look at a lot of the Google Earth.
And they got Google Glasses. Right. I mean, it's almost, you know. Anyway, maybe Facebook beat them to it. But again, when I see people using those glasses, they're like freaked out at how real it is. And it reminds me of that movie from the 90s, or the miniseries called Wild Palms. If you've never seen that, that's a pretty wild stuff. And I put some links to that thing, because again, to me, that's where we're heading, to the virtual reality type of thing, where people, I mean, people are really addicted to technology in the first place. And this is, my idea is you want to not be addicted, you know, you want to be in control of it. So how about some of the, you got any worldwide weirds for us today?
Well, again, I figured I'd keep looking at my surf the web kind of, you know, mantra today. And if you got nothing better to do and you don't want to leave home, you know, one of the things that I picked up, it says the 50 weirdest websites that rock the web. So
there are probably about 500 websites.
Yeah, I think I would have come up with an alternative title for it. You know you're bored when.
Right.
Because they have to really...
Or you know you're poor because you can't go on vacation.
Right. Well, and that's what these things are. These are really for people that have nothing better to do. You know, you see these people sitting there all day long doing this on their smartphones or on their tablets. Well, now this is actually something that they can look at while they're doing that. Because some of the more interesting titles of some of these sites are things like, here's one that I liked, was called catbounce.com, and it says on there, it says, don't worry, no cats were harmed in the making of this website.
Okay.
You got other ones here. Here's one, if you're into the cute fluffy things, it's called koalastothemax.com. I guess that takes you down under, where you can see all the koalas. Procrastinator.com. I mean, I would go see that one, but I'm going to wait for another day.
Yeah.
And here's one for the consummate hacker and all this, because you know some of these hackers, they'll stay on the computer so long that their head will hit the keyboard and it'll just, you know, one character will go across. And this one, literally, the URL for this one is 11111111111.com. And it says, the title on this one says, there are times in your life when you just stop and ask yourself, why? So that kind of sums that one up. And here's my favorite one here. It's called whydidiclickthatlink.com.
Just before it downloaded that really nasty virus that got you. Yeah.
So like I said, this one's called the 50 weirdest websites that rock the web. Go out and Google that and have fun with it if you've got nothing better to do.
We have about a minute left. I want to mention that our new book is out, workingthewebtowin.com. Of course, you can go to the blog and find it there, and it's on Amazon.
That's right.
You can download it on Amazon. If you have Prime, you can get it for free for 30 days or whatever it is. And I also want to mention our Social Slam Dunk, which is what we won our award for here. We're now going to be actually bundling that product with some really cool new things, where you can do virtual scratch-off games and couponing and so on. And it's going to be a very price point sensitive product, so that it'll be affordable pretty much for any business out there. Todd, I'm going to give you the last couple words before we sign off here. Tell us about give us the website name and, you know, how people can get in touch with you.
Well, we're on the web, www.freespiritspheres.com. Just to mention it, there's a great annual Treehouse Symposium just across this border in Washington State. A guy by the name of Pete Nelson, who is a very famous American treehouse builder. He puts it on one year, and then there's another fellow down in Oregon who puts it on the next year. And the guy down in Oregon is called Michael Garnier, who also has a treehouse resort called Out and About Treehouses.
So neat.
Yeah, and
The
just to
annual
let you know, next week,
symposium is great.
we're almost out of time. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to make pay-per-click pay big dividends.
Yep.
And until then,
Keep working the web.
to win.